Alright, so if you've been following along so far, we've designed some of the initial pages here, and we've learned a bunch of different things from components to constraints. And now I think we're ready to jump into our map page here. If we take a look at our sketch here, we see that we have a little map with a save button down here and maybe a button to tell us where we're at and a search bar at the top. Pretty straightforward, but I don't know about you. I'm not 100% sure how we'll get a map into our design. And so that's why we're going to talk about plugins in this lesson. Plugins in Figma are essentially there to help automate your design and help you take your designs to the next level and make designs happen even faster. So to access plugins, if you're on the web app, you can go to the menu option here and then go to plugins. And from here, you'll see the list of installed plugins. Since we don't have any installed plugins, you'll see here, it just says manage plugins. So we're gonna go ahead and click manage plugins. So from here, we'll see a bunch of featured plugins as well as popular ones that are made by the community. And you can really use these to your advantage when you're designing your projects. Of course, these are not all the plugins here. You can go ahead and browse all of them by just going down here where it says browse plugins. So as you can see, we have tons of plugins. I'll go all the way up. I see Unsplash has a plugin. If you remember, a couple lessons ago when we added a background image into our login page, Unsplash actually has a plugin in Figma. So instead of going to the Unsplash website, finding images, saving them and dragging them into your Figma files, the Unsplash plugin will just help you do the same thing, but just in one step. There's charts you can create using this plugin. There are some more icons. There's avatars. So if you're making an app with avatars, you can go ahead and use this plugin. This one's really cool here. It's called Google Sheets Sync, and there's a really good chance that we'll explore it in a future section. What it does is that, as the name might suggest, is that it will sync your design with a Google Sheet. So let's say you have a design with a list of different text. You can actually sync that with Google Sheets, and so as you change your Google Sheets, that text will change within your designs. How cool is that? The list goes on and on and on. I would love to hear some of the useful plugins that you found, and there's just a lot to explore. So if you do want to send me a suggestion of a plugin that you're using, definitely go ahead and share that with us in the Q&A section, or just send it to me by email. You can email me at helloclever@gmail.com. So I'll leave that here on the screen so you can go ahead and email me some cool plugins that you find. So at the very top here, you can also search for specific plugins. So search map. And then let's use this second one here and go ahead and install it. So this is just a little note to tell us that the plugin's been designed by a third-party developer and not Figma themselves. So let's go ahead and just install the plugin. And there we go, plugin installed. I can see it's installed over here. I can uninstall it if I don't want to use it anymore. If you want to learn more about what this plugin does and how to use it, you can go ahead and just click into here. So that's what we're going to do. And as you can see, it helps us make customized map blazing fast. Cool. Just going to scroll down here. You can apply Google Maps or Mapbox, so that's pretty cool. And it's telling us how to use it. Select any layer, including rectangle, ellipse, or even a polygon, and run Map Maker. Sounds pretty straightforward. So let's switch back to our design here. Let's go ahead and, as it says, create a rectangle. And I want this rectangle to take over the entire frame here. That looks good. Now, let's go ahead and go to this option here. And keep in mind, in the desktop app, you can access that from plugins as well. But if you're on the web app, you can go here and do plugins. Now, you should see Map Maker here. Go ahead and click on it. It might take some time to load. Once it does load, it will give you some options here. So you can input a custom address. You can change the type of map that you want, whether it's a road map, satellite, hybrid, etc. The zoom level. So I think all I'm going to do is just maybe zoom in a little bit more into this map. And then let's do make map. And there you have it. We have a map right inside of our designs. Pretty cool. Now let's just complete the rest of the design for our map here. Just going to switch over to my sketch here. So for the map page, we want a little search bar here with a little search icon as well as the text. And then a save button as well as a current location icon. So we need two icons here and then a search bar and then a button component. So let's go ahead and switch over to our design, and let's start from the top. Let's use the rectangle tool, draw a rectangle over here, and let's just stay consistent and keep a 25 pixel space from the left and right. So of course I need to resize that a little bit more. And let's go ahead and change the fill to white. Now it's still barely visible, so why don't we go ahead and add a light gray stroke. I think something like this would work. And then let's go ahead and set a thickness of 1.5 pixels. Let's go ahead and round it to 6 pixels. Let's actually do 8. And let's go ahead and also add an effect of a drop shadow. Change the Y to 5 here. Change the blur to 10. And bring the opacity down to maybe 15%. Or let's actually do 10%. Let's move the Y up to 2 maybe, or 3. I think that's starting to come together. Let's just switch back to our design here. We have a little search icon. So let's insert a text here for search. 16 is good for the font size. Just go ahead and change the weight to regular. And just go ahead and add some space for our icon that we're going to add. Let's go ahead and add another drop shadow. This time, go ahead and make the X 0 and the Y 0 as well. Go ahead and make the blur 30, or actually 25, and the opacity at 5. I'm going to change the opacity of the other one to 20%, or actually 15, so it's not too harsh. I think that's starting to look better here. Now let's go ahead back into our resources for the project. Once you have that open, go over to icons, map, and then you'll see we have our two icons here. So why don't we just go ahead and drag them in. Just going to use Shift Alt to resize them here. Just move them over here. Going to start with the search icon here. Make sure you have the proportions constrained here. Then do 25 here. So that automatically changes the width and height together. Zoom in. Let's put that over here. Right here. And then let's go ahead and give it a selection style of the blue. And let's also go ahead and change the selection color for this to the primary blue that we have. Let's put this at the bottom and give it a shadow, a drop shadow. Let's do 20 and 20%. I think that's good. I'm still not too happy with the shadow of the search bar here. I think it's a little bit too strong. So let's go ahead and just change the 15%, change the blur here to maybe 10. And I think that's slightly better. We want to change the text here to, let's do a light color again. Since this is going to be a placeholder, feel free to just put A9, A9, A9 for the hex code here to get the same color. And I think the last thing here is our save button. So why don't we go ahead and head on over to our assets tab here and go ahead and move a button enabled onto the screen here. Just make sure that has proper spacing, and it does. Just move this up here. And then maybe we also want to show the user where they're at. So why don't we go ahead and use an oval shape. Zoom in here and create maybe a circle of 21 by 21. Duplicate that using Command D here. Then make a larger one of maybe 72 by 72 here. Let's go ahead back to our layers panel and try to align these. Put the other one on top of this one and then just align them together in the center. For the larger one here, let's go ahead and set the text color to using our local color. Let's choose this color. And then let's choose an opacity of, let's do 30% here. And then let's change the other ellipse or the other circle to this color here. I think that looks good for now. We can even make this a little bit larger. I'm gonna use Alt and Shift together to keep the centerness of that, and I think that looks good here. This is way too large, so let's resize it to 35 by 35. Let's make sure that the constraint proportion is on, and then do 35 by 35 here. Or let's actually do 38, and then go ahead and align that here. And I think that looks pretty good for now. We just need to change this text to, what do we have over here, to save. Let's do save location or save address. And there we have it. That's our map page. And we're almost there. We only have 3 more main pages to go. And so we're going to complete that together in the next section of the course. So far we've been working on the user interface for this application here. So if you're not familiar with user interface design, this right here is an example of a UI, or a user interface. The interface is what the user interacts with, but more importantly, we have user experience design, which is essentially how people feel while they're using the UI. Let's quickly switch over to learn a little bit about UX design and what it is and how we can apply it to our project. So what's UX? User experience or UX design is a process design teams use to create products that provide meaningful and relevant experiences to users. In other words, user experience design is a human-first way of designing products, right? Instead of just thinking about putting certain elements into a page and then calling it a day, we actually think about how people will interact with this product and then go back and redesign and make sure that we improve it in a way where people feel good about using them, or even great. So here's an example of a UI versus a UX. A UI is what people see in front of them, the actual interface, whereas UX is how they interact with it, how they use it, how they feel while they're using it. So there's a lot more going on with UX. Great UX is legible to the users, and so this means a great use of fonts and sizes. On the right here, you can see an example of poor UX. This font's not very accessible or easy to read, and in general, try to increase your font sizes and also use easy to read fonts as opposed to something like this. Great UX uses colors in ways that increase and improve contrast. So this is really important here. You want to make sure that you have high contrast in your designs. On the right here, we can see an example of poor UX where it's hard to read the text because it has low contrast. The difference in color or hue between the foreground here, which is the text, and the background, which is kind of a light gray here, is kind of low. So to improve this text, you can either make the text a little bit darker, or if you can lower the background and make it lighter, you can do that as well to help improve the contrast. Spacing is really important. You don't want to overwhelm the user with too much information in one spot. So great UX uses spacing to separate content. And then on the right here, you can see it's kind of overwhelming. There's too much information all squeezed into one area. So that's because there's no spacing between the text or objects there. And in general, just fill most of your design with white space so it's not overwhelming, unless 2 pieces of content are relevant. So this means that unless you have stuff that are related to each other, try to space them apart as much as you can just to help improve the UX. Cool. So alignment is really important as well. Great UX uses alignment to ensure things feel right. So as you can see here on my left here, everything looks nice and organized and aligned, whereas on the right, it doesn't feel right looking at these shapes because they're completely misaligned. So if you remember, throughout our design, we use alignment tools a lot, as I mentioned before, because this is really important in UX design. Consistency is another big one. You want to make sure you stay consistent with your colors and your UI in order to improve your UX. So for our project, that's why we picked the color scheme, so that we stay within a specific color palette or color scheme. So we don't confuse users, right? On the right here, we can see we're introducing some new colors on the right here. So there's a green, unless it has meaning. So for example, if you want to say congrats, so if you want to give, for example, a success type of text to the user, of course you can use green, but try not to use too many colors and too many different types of fonts and things like that, and try to keep it consistent, and try to keep your fonts generally the same size, and keep relevant content together, right? So you see that text is all the way at the bottom, whereas it should be closer to the other text because they're relevant. We're almost done here. So great UX is easy to use. Simple as that. Buttons are reachable and they're big enough to press. And I can't stress this enough because I've seen a lot of applications where they put the buttons in very hard to reach places, especially on mobile, as you can see on the right here. Generally, you want to avoid having frequently used buttons at the very top. Also, don't make your buttons way too small. Especially again on mobile where you're using your fingers to interact with the design. If you make a button that's way too small and maybe someone has a bigger than average hand size, they will likely miss that button. So definitely make your designs accessible to everyone, or as many people as you can, really. Sometimes in design, it's very hard to make your design completely accessible to everyone, but it's definitely best to try and make it accessible for everyone to use, or at least your own users. So there's way more to this. Adding great UX to your designs takes time and testing to get it right. So please be patient with it. But you can start by applying these tips to your design, and it's a great way to start. So now it's your turn to make great UX. I've put this slideshow here in your resources. This is something I just put together as a little handbook for your UX that you can apply to your future projects. So feel free to download the PDF and just have it handy somewhere. So next time you're designing your project, you can just remind yourself of a few of these things in case you forget. All right, so we learned a lot about user experience design, and now as we're designing our mockups, we will keep UX in mind and come back to it and make sure that we add all the proper elements for a great user experience. All right, I think we're ready to start designing our request, profile, and services pages. But before we do that, I want to go ahead and jump into the resources for this lesson right here. You can go ahead and download this text file where there's a bunch of resources for what's called templates in Figma. So essentially templates in Figma, just like many other applications like word editing softwares, allow you to start with a pre-made template so that you don't have to do a lot of things from scratch. And not only that, templates will help you have access to pre-built components that you can just drag into your design. And that's especially handy when it comes to Apple's UI kit for designing. So of course, iOS 13 and any other iOS that you work with will have a certain template or a certain design component to it already built. So you don't need to go ahead and redesign that. Same thing for Google's material design here. So I've included a bunch of resources in here. So let's quickly go through them just so that you can know how you can use these for your future work. Figma has their own templates on their website. So if you go figma.com/templates, you'll be able to access this website where they have a bunch of different templates like mobile UI kits and Instagram templates and a bunch of other cool stuff that you can use like Venn diagrams and things like that. The next resource here is figmaresources.com, also very popular. As you can see, there's a lot of different templates that they have that you can start with. So again, this helps you jump into your design without having to start from scratch. And there's tons of resources in here from the community. So feel free to take advantage of this and save a lot of time for your designs. This is another website, figmacrush.com. Go ahead and check it out. They have lots of resources and UI kits as well. And then these last two resources, of course, as I mentioned, one's for the Apple design resources. So from here, if you go down, you can see iOS templates that you can download. Now, I know right now they don't have Figma here, but keep in mind, you can always download the Sketch version and then import it into your Figma files. And then there's a bunch of other ones if you're designing for different platforms. So since we're designing for an iPhone app right now, let's go ahead and download the Sketch one here. So use the second link here to download for Sketch. And while that's downloading, I'll just go to the last resource here. If you're working on an Android application or any application that's going to be run on Android devices, or even some web applications, you can definitely take advantage of this material design page over here from Google. Cool, so that's templates for us. So just go ahead and open that iOS sketch file that you downloaded from Apple. And then in the next lesson, we'll go ahead and use it in our project. All right, so if you've been following along so far, we've gone ahead and downloaded the Apple Design resource for iOS. If you haven't done so, go ahead and follow this step in our last lesson. And then once you download that, you should be able to open up this file right here from where you can use the iOS 13 sketch files as well as install the fonts that you need. So be sure to head over to this website right here, and I've already have it opened up. Apple uses these font types throughout their UI. So it's best if you go ahead and download all these fonts and just have them on your system. And so this way, when we do import the sketch file, we won't have any issues there. So go ahead and download these fonts, and then we'll get right back to it. So I'm going to go ahead and also make sure that I have all these fonts, and then we'll get right to it. I want to quickly mention that if you're using the Figma web app, go ahead and head on over to figma.com/downloads, and then go ahead and download this font installer right here. Whether you have Mac or Windows, they have both of them right here. As you can see, the desktop app does not require the font installer, but in order for you to be able to apply your installed fonts on your machine into your Figma web app on your browser, you will need to use this font installer. After you install your fonts, I do recommend that you quit the Figma desktop app and just open it again to make sure that those fonts that we've installed have been applied. So now that we're ready to import our iOS 13 sketch file here, let's head on over to Figma and then go back to the main files, the main page over here. I've already imported it, but if you haven't, go ahead and open up iOS 13 sketch, and then go ahead and just drag this UI elements design plus guides right into your Figma app. It should just take a second there to convert it into a Figma file, since this is a sketch file. But once that step is completed, you can go ahead and open your file here. So from here, you have access to colors, text styles from Apple, safe areas, the iPad interface, as well as the iPhone interface. Right now, we're interested in the iPhone interface here, so go ahead and open it up. And then we're looking to apply a couple things right now. I'm just going to drag my mock-up sketch here. You'll see from here that on these two pages, we want to have a navigation bar here. And then on these three pages, the main pages, will have a tab bar in order to switch between these pages. So let's go ahead and drag a navigation bar and a tab bar into our designs from the iOS 13 guidelines. Let me just go ahead and zoom into here. And then this is probably what we're looking for here. We have the navigation bars and the status bars are up here. So the easiest way to actually apply these into our application is to just go ahead and use components. These are all of these elements are already components, but what you can do is you can go ahead and use them in your own projects. I think right now we're just interested in this specific frame here. So why don't we go ahead and just press Command C on the whole frame. So make sure you have everything selected. Use this UI elements dash bars and go ahead and copy the whole thing using Command C, and then head on over to your project here. Let's go ahead and create a new page and name it iOS UI components, and then go ahead and just paste that in here. So now we can use these across our designs. So we can use this navigation bar right here. So why don't we go ahead and just drag that outside. Let's go ahead and also drag this status bar out here. Over here, I see we have the tab bars as well. We want 3 options in ours. So let's go ahead and select this one right here and drag it out as well. And so let's go ahead and now select each of these separately and create a component from them. do it for the status bar, and then we'll do it for the navigation bar here, and lastly our tab bar here. And so now if I head back over to my mockups page here, let's focus in on our main pages here. Let's head over to the assets tab over here, and then from where we have iOS UI components, let's drag in a status bar, place it at the top. Let's go ahead and use Alt to drag over copies on each of these pages. And we'll need a navigation bar on our profile page, so let's go ahead and drag that in. Now you'll see that it's covering my status bar. So one neat shortcut in Figma is that you can use Command and the square brackets to move layers up and down. So just go ahead and press Command and the opening square bracket, and that will move your layer that you have selected down below the other one. That's what we want here. Let's go ahead and just drag that into right here, and then again use Command and the opening square bracket to put it below the layer that we want. And lastly, let's go ahead and drag a tab bar into all three pages, because this will be our navigation structure. So we'll use this tab bar to switch between these three pages. We will add the icons here in the next lesson, but for now, let's go ahead and just rename our pages accordingly. So this one's profile, and this one's services. Let's go ahead and just switch back to my sketch here. Yep, that looks right. We just have an edit button here as well, so let's go ahead and add that as well. Let's just go ahead and delete this square right here as well as the one here. And let's go ahead and delete from here as well. And then in this one right here, let's just go ahead and add an edit button. Now, keep in mind, I'm using the SF Pro Display font. That's the font that iOS uses right now. So go ahead and choose that. And then let's go ahead and resize that to 24 or 22 here and move that up here. Let's just go ahead and change the fill using our color styles to the blue that we have. I think that looks good. So now we've set up our navigation bars, our tab bars, and our status bars as well. That's kind of the baseline here that we need. So in the next lesson, we're going to come back and start designing our tab bar here, as well as work on our request page.